Hello and welcome back to 20something podcast. I'm Helena.
I'm Lockie.
And we are so pleased to have you today because we're going to be discussing romantic relationships.
Yeah, we are. And this was a topic that I think came up really early on when we started discussing topics for the podcast. Because obviously this is something that affects a lot of people in their 20s.
Yes, we all come in and out of romantic relationships. And sometimes we want to close ourselves off and other times we want to expose ourselves as much as we can. And it's an interesting experience navigating whether we feel like exposing or shutting off. And we're going to explore that further. And a good question that we thought to start off with was, are some people made for relationships and others not?
Yeah, and it's an interesting one, right? Because, I mean, well, both of us, like at the moment, we're both single.
Yes. And
we've been single for, I think for both of us, it's been a little while. Hey?
Yeah.
Yeah. But we now find ourselves, I think... It's interesting. I think there's a couple things when it comes to this in terms of whether, you feel like you're made for a relationship or not. It's all about timing. And I think it's a point that I've mentioned in heaps of episodes in terms of like everyone develops in their own stage.
Yep.
And especially when you're in your 20s, because that's obviously the time where you're sort of like becoming your true self, becoming an adult. People are going to develop in their own time. So it's always going to be different and people are going to have different priorities and values and their context, especially their background, that really impacts sort of whether they want to sort of jump into the whole relationship scene really early on or take time to develop yourself.
Yeah, I find in what I've observed in my life is a lot of people, depending on the way they've seen their parents, the values their parents have instilled in them. I've grown up with my parents being like, oh, explore the world, go do all these things, don't get married too young, like that will come when it comes. Where others might be more so modeled that maybe their parents got together in an earlier time of their lives and think, oh, start early, then you can have the rest of your life to travel or do what you want after and you don't want to be an old parent. And those sort of values are instilled in us subconsciously. I think we sort of like block them into our heads and that becomes part of the way we live and what we feel capable of based on what other people tell us from a young age about relationships. So I feel like that has a lot to do with what I believe in with relationships. I'm not in any rush in particular. Of course, it can get to a point where I feel like, oh, some of my friends are getting in relationships, and there are times where you just want to be with someone and feel like loved and have that affection. But then there's other times where you're like with someone and you sort of think, am I looking for companionship for the sake of being with someone, or is this really giving value to my life?
Yeah. And I think for me it's similar as well. Like I've had a similar sort of, I feel like both of us we've had fairly similar upbringings.
Yeah.
And yeah, like for me, I've never necessarily felt the pressure to find a relationship or anything. I mean, it's interesting, like, I guess, like, the people around you as well when it comes to friend groups. I mean, I'm about to turn 25. But yeah, it was interesting. I grew up in a Christian sort of setting, in a Christian sense. And I find a lot of people were getting married, like, really early on.
Yep.
And, like, which I found really interesting. And then it's interesting how, like, culture and religion can sort of affect it as well, actually. Like a lot of people in sort of my Christian friend circles were like getting married really early. Some of them having kids already. And it's also interesting sort of seeing how the times have changed as well.
Yeah,
like you think
generationally.
Back to our parents and like they were getting married, people were generally getting married earlier on. I don't know the exact statistics or the numbers behind that, but yeah, people getting married earlier on, and now it's just getting later and later, and even like having your first kid, it's like back into your 30s, I think, in terms of when you actually...
the timeline's really changed.
Yeah. And I think as well, I think a fair point to bring up as well is that, like, I guess in today's society, there's like, I don't know what the whole, like, behind like the whole settling down thing. That's obviously a big thing now. And I think today's culture has become very, I don't want to say self-obsessed, but it's very like looking out for yourself and thinking about you and... Yeah, but I don't want to say self-obsessed because that's obviously quite like narcissistic. But it's you sort of like want you want to make a life for yourself, I guess. And yeah, that means like pursuing like creative goals and doing what you want to do, traveling,
career goals.
Yeah, it's funny just bring it back to relationships. It's funny how that can sometimes be sidelined, and but yeah, it's all about discovering yourself and learning whether that works for you. And, you know, and like you said before the question, so are some people made for relationships and others not? There's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
In terms of like, it's interesting.
Yeah, there's so many points I wanted to touch on with what you were saying. So true. Generationally, there is such a difference. I feel like I was discussing with my dad the other night about how in his generation, it was kind of just like a goal, like an instilled goal that you'd find someone from like early to mid 20s that you're going to spend your life with. It's just like sort of like a rite of passage of becoming an adult. Whereas, you're right. It is weird to say self-obsessed, but I do agree we're much more self-focused in this generation. There's more focus on career goals, and also with the influence of social media, I feel like we all have an idea of another life rather than the life that's just been modeled to us. We have, of course, with the Christian idea, if you're within a small circle of influences, that ultimately is going to influence the way you see things. But then when you get a taste of something else outside of that, then that becomes interesting too. With social media, we see all these people doing things differently. And that, I definitely think it plays a role. I don't know if it's the ultimate role. I don't know how that has worked specifically in regards to how we've changed generationally. But I definitely think social media has had a huge influence. But we see that there's not more to life. I'm careful how I say this. There's other parts of life to enjoy other than being with someone. And then again, as we were discussing earlier before the podcast, people have different priorities in regards to, some people may find their fulfillment and career progression within a job that may be more stable in comparison to what we experience as creatives, where we kind of feel like there's a lot of trekking through different areas, trying to narrow your path. You have to do some things for free or at a minimal cost in order to get your name out there. There can be more time sacrificing, just in a general sense, as a creative. And sometimes I think if you're so passionate about a creative goal, speaking from a creative perspective, you sort of make a decision within you that I'm speaking from my own experience, within you, that maybe your career and your creative goals are more important at this stage of your life than a relationship. Whereas other people at the same age may think that they may go through, how do I explain this? I know I'm being mumble jumbled, but they may have more time that they prioritize for a relationship because that may be a core part of the life that they want to live. Whereas other people like us, for example, this creative goal is prioritized and the rest sort of seems like a bonus to us. It may not be as necessary in where we're looking, our vision for the future. Yeah. At least at this time.
Yeah, at least at this time. That's right. And I think it's important to have that awareness in terms of, understanding maybe whether a committed, big relationship is right for the time that you're in, for that space that you're in now.
Yep.
And
yeah,
were you gonna say?
I was just going to say, I think that awareness is really important, because if that's a life that you're choosing to live a creative life where you're making these sacrifices, you're not putting yourself out in these positions, maybe the clubs that people go to meet people, or you're not on the dating apps, then you're not going to, then times where you feel down and think, I'm so lonely, you have to have that awareness and think, well, this is the life that I'm choosing to live. If I wanted to expose myself, then that's a different story. I might feel disheartened if I'm not making connections in that sense, but I'm not even exposing myself. And this is the life that I'm choosing. Of course, yes, generally. So then you shouldn't be disheartened when you compare yourself to someone that's made a relationship their real big priority.
Yeah, and I think it's super important as well to not feel like you have to conform to that sort of those societal norms that maybe, I mean, again, just in terms of Western culture, we see it in movies and TV shows, there's so much romance around in everything, right? And there's almost, this subtle peer pressure to be like, and so there's always the joke, there's always the memes of the 27, 28-year-old guy who comes home and doesn't have a girlfriend, and there's always a Christmas lunch again, doesn't have a girlfriend. And it's almost become a meme now.
No, it's so true. Yeah, I just think of Bridget Jones's Diary, and she's coming home to these Christmas dinner lunches, and everyone's like, "Oh, where's your man? Isn't time's ticking? Where is it?" And it's funny how there is that older generation sort of being like, oh, like obviously their intentions are good. They want you to be happy, but it's like, oh, when are you going to bring a nice guy home? And yeah, it is funny, those expectations.
But I think now more than ever, just with the society that we live in now, it's like there's a lot of individual freedom, and I think it's important not to feel, especially when you're coming into your 20s and even as a teenager, like peer pressure. So it's like a big thing, especially going through school, and even still, working through your 20s. It's important not to feel like you have to conform to that and feel like that you have to be in a relationship. I think I've seen some times, probably more so in school, like when you're like a teenager, that maybe you might feel like you have to find a relationship just because like everyone else has one. Like for me, I specifically remember, I don't know if anyone from my school's watching, but like year 7 camp was like, I don't know why, it's so weird, but it was the camp where like everyone just like was like boyfriend and girlfriend. It was so weird. And it was just like a thing. It just like, I don't know. But yeah, it's I think it's easy to sort of, if that's all happening around you and you see people, even getting married and having kids and be like, oh Jesus, like you sort of, you don't show it or you don't tell anyone, but in your head you're just like, oh my gosh, it's like, am I behind? Like what's going on? But everyone develops in their own time. Like that's the thing, right?
I feel like that's the point that I was trying to touch on before when I was going everywhere with it is, if you expose yourself and that's a priority for you and you're in different situations where you're you're in social situations, you're wanting that to happen, then it's more likely to come along. But then again, if you're too needy for something, if you're trying to fill a void and you're like coming from an empty place, then people will feel that needy energy. So there needs to be a good balance of satisfying yourself in your own passions, in your own career or whatever brings you joy, filling yourself up first and then going out for that approach if that's what's intended, because no one wants that desperate energy around.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, I guess it sort of ties into sort of a little bit what we're saying now, but self-discovery is such a massive thing. I think when making that shift through your 20s and you're growing, you're just discovering more about yourself. It's important to take that time to I think I genuinely believe, and I'm not saying that just because I have, as we mentioned, we've been single for a while, but like I genuinely believe that it's like so crucial to have a period, like a solid amount of time in your 20s where you're just by yourself.
Yep.
And you're just alone. And, whether that even means like traveling alone. I mean, I know you've traveled alone, which I mean, you could probably break down that more as well in terms of that experience, but it's so important to have that alone time. I know some people that have sort of just like been locked in relationships like their whole life basically. They've basically just, always had like a partner or always been with someone. And I don't know, there's so much value in just like taking time by yourself. You can, it gives you the space for your brain and your heart to sort of develop in their own way and develop when you're developing by yourself. Like it's different when you're with someone else because they can sort of support you in a way that, it's almost like they can become like a crutch, like sometimes not in the best way. Yeah. And it's important to have that time by yourself to develop those skills, those abilities, I guess those mental, the social abilities, and learning like your own love languages and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's so much to it.
Yeah, yes, definitely. And standing on your own 2 feet and backing yourself up rather than having that crutch, I think is so important of being if I'm going to touch on the travel stuff, I've always had this like passion to like from like 16 onwards, I was like, I need to do things. I need to be alone. I need to do things without people knowing where I am. I need to make decisions without asking people. And
that was definitely always going to be alone for you?
Yeah, I wanted, there was no compensation. I had to do things and make decisions for myself and I wanted to feel alone.
Yep.
And I wanted to feel solely independent. And I still feel like I'm trudging through that. I'm like, coming out of the almost content side of being like doing things alone. But it just felt like it was such a necessary time for me, especially early 20s, thinking, well, there's so much time to find someone. If I lock myself down now, this time might not come again. So it was just so necessary. And obviously it's a privilege that I was able to do that. But I definitely feel as though the older we get and the wiser we get, the more we're able to define the relationship that we want to have. And everyone defines their relationship with someone on their own terms. So if you both come from a well-experienced background, I feel like you can create a healthy relationship between the two of you. If you're both content on your own and you're not looking for your identity in someone else, then you both come as whole packages that feel full and healthy together. Whereas if you're coming from an empty space trying to fill something, I feel like there's easily people feel like you're reliant on them, vice versa, and it can become too codependent.
Yeah, it's not a healthy setup either.
Yeah, and moving back to what I was saying before, I understand that whether we like it or not in relationships, there's got to be some compensation. There needs to be some fairness. It can't be all about what one person wants to do. How does that influence the other person? And I think it is important in your 20s to have that time where there is no compensation. It's all about how you want, how you feel, and seeing how that goes rather than thinking about getting approval from someone else in the sense of like moving anywhere you want or just experiencing that soul freedom. And then once you're content with that, then moving into a relationship. Yeah. But that's my own basis. I've seen friends that have been in relationships for a long time and they have found that freedom within their relationships, which is really lucky and very healthy.
Yeah.
But that's special and that can be rare. Generally, people that get in relationships young that haven't fully developed how they want to be treated, where they stand, what they stand for, can easily find themselves in a sort of like limbo. And it is great when people do find these healthy relationships. And I do think it's rare when you're young to find a very good, healthy relationship to take into adulthood.
Oh, 100%.
But generally, I think it's very healthy to discover what you want on your own before you present that to someone else.
Yeah, and I think taking that time, of self-discovery is so important because not only is it just good for yourself on an individual level, but it makes your future relationships
so much more exciting.
Yeah, it's high quality. Like for me, I always think about like for relationships, it shouldn't be that like you just. I mean, it was sort of I guess touching on a little bit of what you're saying there, but like I guess relying, the compromise you're saying, we're talking about compromising and all that sort of stuff. You don't want to have to like. You don't want the relationship to sort of like fill a hole in your heart sort of thing, I guess. Like you want to be like a solid... I think the best relationships are when there's two really solid individuals that have come together and can like make each other just better people just by being together rather than sort of like, compared to like an unhealthy relationship where you're sort of relying on someone like to, it's
I think that comes down to being very intentional about finding your passions beforehand and knowing what they are, and then diving into that as your soul. Like, I went to a expedition thing in Melbourne where this sexologist named Chantel Otten, she's amazing. She was talking about what is sexy about your partner, like if you've lost a sort of flame and how to rejuvenate the relationship again. She was saying it's always sexy to see someone in their passion, like just killing it in their passion. And I think that's so true because when you have something that really aligns you with your higher being or just that great feeling, it's energetic. It's sort of magnetic. You want to be around someone that just feels like you love. It's so attractive to see someone talk about something they're passionate about.
Yeah.
And I think if someone has that fuel that they're dipping into often, that's going to be sexy to see someone in that. That's going to be attractive to see someone getting so much energy out of something and not relying on you for it.
Yeah.
And I think it comes down to that, finding your passions and being intentional about that before you enter a relationship and not having a relationship as your main passion because it's too much pressure on another person.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, as individuals, you're always going to have your own passions and interests and goals and values and not getting mixed up with like sort of filling a relationship with that. I love that so much. I think that's so massive and that's so exciting when just going back to my point, I guess, of saying like how when two individuals are like so like have found themselves so much, know themselves so well and can sort of come together And wow, yeah. There's a lot there.
I think, that's like my main criteria when I'm looking
Yeah.
for a relationship. I'm like, I don't care what they're passionate about. Just be passionate about something that's not solely me. I know, like, obviously you want someone to be passionate about you, but it's so attractive to see someone talk about something that gives them so much meaning and purpose. Because that's what's the word? That's attractive, and you just want to be around someone that feels so full in something.
That's the thing. Like, and when it comes to relationships, I think it's easy to sort of think of it on a surface level and not necessarily thinking about those deeper things. But yeah, I think the most exciting relationships, doesn't even have to be romantic, but even just like friendships, just like being around with like your peers, is like the people that have like those passions and those. I mean, even like recently, I was even telling you before, like I've like found so many like musician friends and like just different artists just doing their thing, and like I'm finding it so exciting just being around them, because they're giving it a shot at their craft and their passion, and it makes you motivated too. If you're in a relationship with someone like that, it makes you motivated as well, and that's so exciting when there's such an energy there, there's such an electricity there that it just and then the relationship itself just blossoms.
Yeah. Yeah, wow, look at us solving the key to relationships. Two single people.
Well, I mean,
it's
thing.
great perspective.
Yeah.
There's no rush. I think that's what we embody.
Yeah.
Is being mid-20s, we're both, I think, killing it in our own creative fields, working towards big things, yet not feeling too rushed to be in a relationship.
No, and again, I guess it sort of ties back to almost our first point about talking about, whether some people are made for relationships and maybe feeling the pressure to rush into it. Yeah, never feel like you have to jump into that stage. And
I feel like, but in our own lives, of course, like knowing each other personally, it comes and goes in waves. It's so easy to like watch a romantic movie and be like, shit, I want a boyfriend. Like I need someone to give me a massage, or I don't know what, like, do you know what I mean? Like you just want, you get in that stage where like you're exposed to someone that's in a really good relationship. You're like, oh shit, I wish someone would speak to me like in that way. And it comes and goes in waves, but keeping the main gist of where you're heading, your priority, and the rest is a bonus. But if that is what you really want, like there's time, it will come. And yeah, it just depends on what you're prioritizing right now.
Yeah, there's no denying that like everyone has an urge to be in a relationship. Like that's just a human desire to, partner with someone. That's very common. And obviously for some people that's stronger than others.
Yeah.
Like some people are happy just to be, very sort of, like their own space, like their own time. And
there are some people that really feel like I feel like there's some people that really do suit being in a companionship and they thrive from that.
Yeah.
Whereas others, like it can work, but they also are comfortable in their own self and don't feel the need to like share that necessarily all the time.
Yeah, and like I think that's maybe like going back. I'm not necessarily dissing like being in a relationship at all.
Yeah,
like,
that's why I'm so careful with everything I'm saying, because I don't want to come from a place.
Yeah, but like because I was talking about like the value of being single and like taking time by yourself as well. But it's like, I mean, that just the number one thing is just that self-awareness. And that as long as you like are confident in yourself and like know that whether you're single or whether you're in like a relationship, just understanding, like if you're, as long as you're happy, and man, like in terms of like, I've seen so many like people just like in unhealthy and toxic relationships. It's always hard to watch from the outside. And it's like, man, I wish that person could just spend some time alone by themselves. It'd be so much better for them just to have some time for self-discovery.
Giving space for new things is so important too. But to wrap it up, there is value in having relationships. We've gone all the way down the pathway of there's value in not having relationships and self-discovery, understanding yourself, knowing who the hell you are, what the hell you want. Even though we never work that out, we just get closer to knowing. But then also having connections is so important to understanding where your barriers are, where you draw the line, what you do want, what you want in your sex life, what you don't want in your sex life. It's important to have experiences to better understand how you feel in that romantic relationship sphere. And those experiences give you more. You become closer to what your ideal, I guess, relationship is, whatever that is. But at least your boundary setting.
Yeah, because it's actually a big point as well. Like, while it is important to take that self-discovery time, having those connections and you know, whether that is just on I guess you don't necessarily have to, like, to learn about how you interact with other people in a relationship sense. You don't have to be just like dating, you know, different people every month.
Yeah, no.
You could just be like having just social gatherings, just like talking to different people. You know, traveling's great because you get to meet a whole variety of people as well. I'm sure you'd know, but yeah, it's so important because you learn so much from those encounters with the variety of people, and you pick up little things and you learn about yourself along the way. And it's always interesting meeting people that maybe have conflicting, you know, ideals or you know, sort of a different sort of background. And that can sort of challenge your own way of thinking. And I think that's really healthy. And yeah, all these little things just help to sort of, I guess, fine-tune your brain and your heart in terms of knowing what you want when you are looking for that soul partner.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Connection is at the core of the human experience. And I think it's at the core of all our passions.
Yep.
And we just want to be seen and heard and felt in whatever way you want to take that. But yeah, we want to be acknowledged. And I think that's why relationships are so exciting, because there's so much potential and there's so much that we can share with someone that really cares about what we have to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man. Just want to go like hang out, just like have like a party now.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting. The idea of soulmates is exciting, whether you believe in soulmates or not. Wow, that's a lot there too. But we don't know. We can't. We can be so structured. We can be so planned.
Yeah.
We can say, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But then someone comes and it's like, Lucky, I've met this guy. What the hell do I do? Like, it's so, it just happens. It's the way you feel. If you're not feeling good in something, taking the time out to be aware of that. Give yourself time when needed, when necessary, and not rushing into things, but then also letting things happen sometimes. It's such a balance.
Yeah. Do you reckon everything happens like in terms of like meeting people? Do you reckon everyone has a purpose in your life, even if they're like relationships like didn't last or friendships, connections that didn't last?
Do you think everyone has a purpose?
Yeah.
When
Do you
they
reckon
come
it's
into your
like,
life?
you know, does everything have a meaning in terms in that sense?
I like to think so. Yes.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, I don't like to have regrets.
Yeah.
No, I think it's interesting. I think it's important to having a perspective of, you know, looking at all relationships, successful and unsuccessful, and understanding and evaluating the impact that they had on your life.
Yeah.
I think that's important to
I think
look at. But yeah.
I think as humans we can find meaning in everything. And
yeah.
we can find positive meaning and lessons in everything. So I think if we come from a perspective of wanting to find the good in everything, as painful as some relationships are, then we will. So it's a choice as to whether we believe everyone comes. I think it's a choice as to whether we believe everyone comes into our life for a necessary reason or a lesson.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so far, so good for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though the depths of a relationship breakup, especially the first relationship breakup you ever deal with, feels like literal hell.
Man, yeah. I mean, that's a podcast on its own, just like the breakups.
That'd be a fun topic.
Yeah.
Maybe one of us need to get in a relationship and then have a breakup. Just so we can be fresh off the bat.
Just super
What
fresh.
does a breakup feel like?
The day after, quick record.
Yeah, Lucky.
I just broke up. Quick, let's record the podcast.
Hurry up.
My emotional turmoil is fresh.
Caramel Sunday pronto.
Just eating a caramel sundae during the episode.
Yeah, it's so interesting and so exciting.
Yeah.
But coming from a full place, we keep trying to summarize this episode. Coming from a full place is so important. Finding a passion, people will be attracted to that. It's so attractive. I'm attracted to myself when I'm in my passion. I don't know about you. But I feel attractive when I'm doing something I'm passionate about.
Good. That's good. Having that having a relationship with
yes,
yourself, right?
Shit, that's another topic.
Yeah, there we go. That's its own separate.
Oh my God, so much.
But yeah, hopefully, I mean, for the listeners, maybe this has instilled some conversation, or if you've got any thoughts on what we've talked about today.
Let us know.
Yeah. Where can they find us?
You can find us 20something_pod on Instagram. Otherwise, we're on TikTok. We release a new episode every Friday fortnight on all streaming platforms. We shall see you on the social media platforms. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed some of the mumble-jumbled words that finally got somewhere, and it was a lot of fun. So we will see you next time. Thank you.
See you guys.
Bye.